Good morning, everyone. It's good to be here with you. My name is Zach Falk, and this is the Mortgage Education Series put on by Black Diamond Mortgage. But we have a little bit of a switch up this week. So if you're not here for a psychology lesson, the door is over there, or you can go ahead and shut down the window that you're watching this YouTube on, because this is actually Psych 101 today. And so if you came thinking that you're going to get mortgage education, you came to the wrong spot. Psych. Oh man, that was cheesy. Hopefully you caught what I did there. There's a good TV show back in the day called Psych that used to make me laugh. But this class today is actually both. So we are going to focus on what I've titled it the psychology of real estate. And it's not necessarily a heavy topic, but it's an important topic. And oftentimes I'll joke with people and I'll say that about 75% of my job as a loan officer is actually psychology. And oftentimes I'll say that sort of tongue in cheek, but there's a lot of truth to that statement. And today we're going to kind of explore what I mean by that. So, first, I want to highlight who this class is for. The class is for anyone and everyone. If you're a buyer and you're interested in buying real estate, the principles we talk about today will be particularly important for you. But even if you are in the service industry as it relates to real estate, so perhaps a real estate agent, or if you're in title and escrow, everything that we do as professionals to help consumers buy homes has to follow these principles. And for you to be really good at your job, you need to be able to explain to people why long term thinking, why delayed gratification makes sense. And so that's ultimately what we're going to be talking about today. And I think that the people who are the most successful at illustrating these principles will actually be the most successful if you're selling real estate or if you're buying it. So it applies to everybody. I'm going to start the class by telling a story about someone, and I want you guys to think about who I'm talking about because I think you'll be able to figure it out as I go through the details. So, there was this young man. He was living his life relatively comfortably. He had his household income situation was dual income, no kids, and he was renting about an $800 a month apartment. And this was about this. This story is about 2017, and $800 a month for an apartment is a great price. It was spacious. It was acceptable for what they needed to live. And as a result, they had plenty of extra expendable money. So every month they were putting money in savings. They were enjoying the things that they wanted to be doing, maybe buying a set of golf clubs. There's your first hint. Or going out to eat or going to the movies or going on vacations. Things were quite rosy. But this person, one day I had somebody tell them that they should buy a house. And conceptually, it made a lot of sense. Yeah, that sounds good. They should thought they should own a house. Nothing wrong with that. So they went through the process. They got pre-approved by a mortgage company, and they decided that they were going to take a stab at it. So then things started to shift. Things started to change for this person. So in the home buying process, they went through about 6 different offers on a house before they finally got one accepted. And this person ended up buying a house at the age of 21. And it was the scariest thing that they did. So, what was the why behind the purchase? Most people, when they buy homes, have a why. We're going to talk a little bit about that later. But for this guy, his wife was 8 months pregnant and the pressure was on to find a house. The reason is there you go. The cat is out of the bag. The story's about me, so now you can focus in on what I'm saying. We had a neighbor who was not the kindest, and they had difficulty dealing with the noise of 2 adults sharing a wall. And so we were wondering how they would be able to handle an infant who inevitably would cry and be up at odd hours of the night. So the why was very simple. The why was we need a place to live that is our own place that meets our needs in the moment. But the finances didn't really make a whole lot of sense. So the mortgage payment, I bought a house at 21. The mortgage payment I took was 50% approximately of my gross income. I had to do a $0 down loan. I had no money in the bank. I was a kid, right? I didn't have anything to my name. Um, and I remember feeling as though I would get paid twice a week. And it was as if one of the paychecks did, I'm sorry, twice a month. It was as if one of the paychecks didn't even matter. Like it wasn't even something that we considered was money because it was going straight to the mortgage payment that we took. I have one specific memory where we actually had on this brand new house that we purchased, the garage door broke. There was no warranty or anything like that. And because of our financial situation, we didn't even have the money to repair the garage door. And so we actually manually operated that garage door for about 2 weeks. I don't remember what happened, but money showed up, or we were able to save in another area and we got it fixed. So the point I'm making is it wasn't really glamorous. At the same time, my wife and I, we have 3 kids now. And so we were adding more kiddos to the mix, and kiddos are wonderful. They're also expensive. And so our expenses by month increased significantly from the lifestyle that we were living before. And I was proceeding on a hope that it was going to work out because that's what people had told me, but I had not personally experienced it yet. And in fact, there were many times where I was frustrated because I was also taught as a child that it's important to save money, and at the time, we were not putting any money in savings. Everything was going to life expenses and the mortgage payment. So that produced quite a bit of stress. For us, we ultimately were living paycheck to paycheck. But I want to shift now. That was almost 8 years ago now. And, or I'm sorry, 7 years ago. The situation now is so much different, and I am so grateful for it because I can use my own personal story to explain why long term thinking and delayed gratification is absolutely the best strategy when it comes to life in general, but specifically to real estate. So today, that house that we bought, we still live in it. It's not very big, and so we're definitely looking to expand. Where our family size is too big for it, but it's worth $250,000 more than I paid for it, and I did nothing for that other than buy a house when it was uncomfortable. If I wanted to sell it, it would be as if someone handed me $250,000 because I owned a home. And that's it. That's a big number. The mortgage amount now is less than $200,000, and you can hardly find anything like that in the valley right now, a mortgage amount of under 200,000. We have a line of credit on that house, and that line of credit is untapped and is going to actually fund our next real estate adventure. We're actually going to build a house here pretty soon. And the other thing that's really important with this is that as life moves on, things change. So, what I'm talking about today is short term versus long term thinking. The short term thinker cannot handle dealing with the idea that things will get better in the future, and that's not always true. Depends on your work ethic, but it can things can get better. And so for us, the mortgage payment is about the same today as it was when we bought the house, but the percentage is no longer anywhere close to 50% of my gross income. And so things change. And so all of a sudden, that short term pain that we experienced has become an outstanding long term decision for us. Which brings me to a concept that I like to talk to with all my customers. There's 2 ways to view the world, and this is an important principle. And you will find that most people deal in just one and not the other. But when you look at income and you look at expenses for your personal life, you can do everything in your power to reduce expenses as much as possible. You have a lot of control over that in many sense. You can pay less for food. You can buy generic items at the store for clothing. You can live a very lean life, and as a result, the amount of expenses compared to your income can be low and you can enjoy life that way. The other way to view life, which is my preferred method, and I think it's the way people should view it, is what if you made so much money that the expenses that you have don't matter? And if you listen to or talk with very wealthy people, that is the lens with which they think. Expense is a part of life. Expense is a way to get forward. But ultimately, the objective is to earn enough income that the amount of expenses you have don't really matter. So, the person who told me that I should buy a house when I was younger was my father, which I'm very grateful for. He's now almost a 40-year mortgage vet, so he knew it was in my best interest. But all he could tell me at the time was this will be worth it in the end. And I had a really hard time believing him during those periods of time. So that's what this class is about. I wanted to use my own personal story because I think it illustrates the point well. But the concept of delayed gratification is something that we as real estate professionals or you as consumers, you have to understand, particularly as we look at the real estate market in the Flathead Valley or all over the state of Montana or even the nation in 2024. The concept of delayed gratification is arguably more important today than it was, even though perhaps it's about the same. So, if you had to ask yourself if you're a short term or a long term thinker, how would you answer that question? I think the only way you can actually answer it is to do some significant self evaluation on whether that's true, because we're all short term thinkers if we allow ourselves to be. So, a couple examples. Think about this moving away from real estate. How does this apply in other areas of life? Absolutely, it does. It applies in food, it applies in diet, it applies in exercise. If you talk to chiropractors or physical therapists, dietitians, sports psychologists, personal trainers, everyone who is designed to try and help your body or your personal mental performance increase, if you ask them, what is your greatest frustration in your industry? They will almost all answer. I've actually asked a few of these people this question. They will almost always answer, it's giving people the tools to make changes in their life and having them do nothing with it. It's really discouraging. If your job is to take someone's body who is in pain and is dealing with frustration that relates to that pain, and you know how to fix it, and you prescribe them the solution, but the solution is work, and they don't go do it, that's discouraging because your client is continuously dealing with this pain that you know can be fixed, but they don't want to do anything about it. And that is a great example of what delayed gratification looks like, because delayed gratification requires momentary pain. And oftentimes it might not even be momentary. It could be a period of time that's rather painful. But the objective is to get to a long term result that is better for you. And that's absolutely true in real estate. So one of the things I do, and this is hopefully to help you if you're in the industry to serve people or to sell real estate for people, I in about 90% of my loan appointments, I spend the first half of the conversation doing my very best to only listen. And I'll explain why I do that. But before I do, I'm going to go into some kind of scenario based stuff. And just remember, none of this is a judgment on anyone. People have different life choices. And if they choose to make a certain path their way forward, maybe they are comfortable renting, that's okay. At the end of the day, I don't necessarily agree that that's what's best for them, but that's okay because that's the choice that they've made. So, the question is, how can you effectively serve someone if you don't actually know what they need? And that is why I spend a large percentage of time listening to my clients before we get into anything related to the mortgage itself. You want them to articulate the reasons why for you. So here's a couple questions that I like to ask that might help you, especially if you're a real estate agent. This is really important as you work toward helping your client find the right place. But I'm always trying to figure out what is their why. That's the first question. Question number one, what is their why? Why do these people want to buy a house? Ultimately, the objective for you is you'll then learn what the motivation is behind the reason for the appointment. If you know the motivation, you are far better equipped to help them make decisions, deal with the tough things or the good things. If you understand the motivation and you recall that and you bring your client back to that original motivation when maybe things require some short term pain to get to the long term result. Question two that I always like to find out: how fast do people want to go when they're buying a home? What's the expectation of the schedule? Um, Part of the reason I ask that is because I want to determine if they have the ability to exercise long term gratification. If somebody has a lease who's ending, it's kind of difficult to get into this because they have a deadline that they have to meet in order to move on to the next phase of their home ownership or rental situation. But if they have time, then every once in a while it might make sense for them to spend that time to get to a better result in the end. Then I like to ask a lot of questions about what people's lives look like today. So what I say when I say listening at the beginning, what that really means is I'm asking a lot of questions and then I let them talk. So, for example, I like to find out how good they are with money. And believe it or not, you can find out how good someone is with money just by asking them questions about their hobbies. It's really, really interesting. So, if you hear someone say, "I have a ton of toys. I have a boat. I have an ATV. Got a snowmobile." Oh, interesting. Okay, are those financed, or did you pay cash for those? You can ask very unassuming questions and more often than not, people who finance the majority of their hobbies tend to be short term gratification people. They're not necessarily thinking about the long term. They're hoping for the high, if you will, in the moment. Another thing I like to ask about, well, do you guys go on vacation a lot? Vacations are a good indicator, unfortunately, because they're so expensive, of how people handle short versus long term gratification. Or maybe they say, I always get the latest iPhone. I always have the latest Wari workout clothes. Yes, I know what those are. I know it's kind of a big deal because my wife likes them, but I do know what they are. But you can always figure out through their lifestyle whether they're short or long term thinkers. And why that's important for us is we are trying to shift their mindset because we know that interest rates are higher, home prices are higher, therefore mortgage payments are higher. So we know we as professionals already know that the sacrifice is likely going to need to be made to buy this house. So you're trying to determine, are they capable of making that sacrifice? So then the next line of questioning that I go to, this is kind of the set of questions number 4. I like to try and hear a sense of, I'm ready to change how things are today because I know what's best for me. You can hear that come out in conversation with people all the time. So, for example, I'm sick of renting. That's a pretty common one I get. Or I'm so tired of paying my landlord's mortgage. Doesn't make any sense to me how that's a good deal for me. Or I feel like I'm lagging behind my friends. I see my friends buying houses. I see my friends buying their second home. Um, or maybe they want to provide a better place for their kids to grow up. Or maybe they just got married and they need to find a house. Or maybe like me, they have a baby on the way and they need to find a house. All those things I just mentioned are examples of how you, when you're serving your clients, can go, aha, there's an opportunity here for them to change their current lifestyle because the events that are taking place in their life are demanding a change and they're interested in making that change happen. So then, once I learn the information that I want to learn from those initial questions that I ask, that's when we start to actually build a plan and chart out kind of what the next steps are going to look like for them. Oftentimes, people can't qualify for a mortgage the first time they talk to a mortgage professional. And that's important to know as a real estate agent. Just because you're talking with someone doesn't always mean that they're ready to go. So, that's where the loan officer comes into play. We are absolutely interested in building plans for people that will get them to their end goal, even if that means a lifestyle change has to take place first. And that's why this is so psychological and not necessarily mortgage or mathematics. Oftentimes, simply the opportunity to buy a house comes down to simply making changes in the way that people live their lives. So that's what we're trying to figure out. Ultimately, we know that what we're doing, and this is how I go to sleep at night and how I get so much gratification from my job. We know that this is in their best interest to do that. I lived that. I lived that short-term discomfort, and it was able to produce a significant benefit for me. So I know it's in their best interest. It's getting someone to believe that it is that's the most difficult part. So, why do we know that it's absolutely in the best interest of people to buy real estate? I want to give you a couple statistics. I've mentioned these before, so if you've heard them, forgive me for the repeat, but they're so important that I talk about them a lot. Number one, homeowners have on average a 40x net worth increase when compared with a renter. 40 times. So the average net worth of a homeowner is just over $250,000, $255,000. The average net worth of a renter is $6,300. Of course, net worth is a summation of assets and compared with liabilities. Wealth is what's produced through real estate, and that's a big deal. Secondly, interestingly enough, homeowners actually have excellent credit scores. The median credit score for a homeowner is about 754, and renters are generally they generally have fair credit scores. The median there is 638. So there's something about owning a home that produces responsible living with how you handle the rest of your finances. I don't know why, but it is something that takes place psychologically. When you own a home, you now have a responsibility for that. And that's why we see higher credit scores with homeowners. Next thing, number three, the median household income for a homeowner is about $86,000 a year. The median household income for renters is about $42,500 a year. So homeowners on average earn double what a renter earns, which is crazy. What's the only difference? The only difference is the house. And so it's basically there's a desire to do well financially that produces the desire then to work harder or more efficiently. And that oftentimes can come back to the fact that they own a home. Of course, there's other factors, but this is a big one. And the fourth, and perhaps the most important one, particularly for us in Montana, home appreciation. That's what I experienced. That's why it was as if someone handed me a $250,000 check for simply buying a house. Um, Generally, home appreciation is considered anywhere between 2 and 4% per year. But in Montana, this is where the statistics are crazy. 71% appreciation in the last 5 years in Montana. 71%. That's huge. Go further back, it's 115% appreciation over the last 10 years. And it's almost 300% appreciation since the year 2000 in Montana. So if that is not enough justification for why it makes sense to buy a house, I don't know what else is. And again, that's about getting to the psychology of the buyer or of you as the buyer. You should hear those numbers and you should want that. You should say 300% in 24 years. How does that not make sense for me to do it? I'm willing to change my lifestyle because I can see now, based on the math, that the opportunity in the future is incredible. So, with that, I'm getting close to where I'm going to close here. Always open to questions. Um, but the other thing I like to ask people is to go home from this, go on with your day, start asking people that you know and respect, people that you think will give you the information, um, what they paid for their homes. And I'm an open book about it, so I don't mind telling you. I paid $220,000 for my house, and that was in 2017. Pretty good price, and pretty crazy when you talk to people trying to buy homes today. But go further back. Ask your parents. If your grandparents are still living, ask them. The numbers get lower and lower and lower on those purchase prices. And again, that hopefully, this is why I tell people to do this that I meet with, that should produce an understanding that changing my life today makes sense because it's going to produce a better future. I'm willing to do the hard work. I'm willing to live maybe a little bit less glamorously, take a couple less vacations, go out to eat a little bit less, because in the end, it's going to make sense for me. Excuse me. So, what's the concept that we learned? Delayed gratification, right? And I think that I'm hoping that for those of you who watch this, that you actually do a little bit of self-analyzation. I oftentimes encourage people to start with just one area. So if I talk to a customer who has everything financed, they've got a boat, they've got a ATV, they got a snowmobile, they have 3 cars financed, they've got credit card debt, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The idea of changing the lifestyle is almost unthinkable because it sounds so intense and so difficult. So I always encourage people to go home from our appointment and think about just one thing that you can do differently to start. And hopefully, what that does is it produces a change or a noticeable change in their life to where they go, okay, I get it now. I'm ready to tackle the next thing. And so that's my encouragement to you as well, is if you're struggling with short-term gratification, which we all do, I do. It's so hard not to. You're even the most common example for me is I get hungry around noon and I bring lunch from my house and I go, you know what? That lunch doesn't sound very good. You know what sounds better? A nice wrap and roll wrap. That sounds a whole lot better. I'm going to go get one. Boom. I succumb to short-term gratification. So it's practice. It's really, really difficult. But I think if you struggle with it, it can be fixed. And the long term benefits are absolutely there as it relates to homeownership. And so I hope that with that, the psychology behind real estate is something that you can buy into, explain to others, and actually benefit from in the long run. So, any questions today from those of you who are online? Looks like I have a couple chats. Let me check and see. Yeah, Stephanie said, I can definitely relate. Hashtag family business. I like that. Kaylin, thanks for laughing at my joke at the beginning. I appreciate that. I was feeling like nobody enjoyed it, so that's helpful to know. And Stephanie said, easy now, hard later, or hard now, easy later. There's only 2 options in life. I completely agree with that. I'm gonna read it again. Easy now, hard later, or hard now, easy later. That's exactly the concept of delayed gratification for sure. Any questions? Okay. Well, you guys know where to find me. You can call the loan hotline 406-862-4999. You're more than welcome to call my cell phone or text me. I'm have an always on policy 406-407-5432 if you want to hit me up. I would love to get lunch with anybody if you guys want to dig into this concept further. I think it really is the foundational pillar to being successful in real estate, whether you're buying or selling. Thanks a ton. We'll catch you guys next week for another great class sponsored by Black Diamond Mortgage. Have a good day, guys. See ya.